Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the episode of the NFL Universe. I am missing Max today. He was a little busy. Week 10 happened. We're getting to week 11 picks as well as a little bit of news that happened throughout the week. So without further ado, Cam Newton signed to roughly about a $10 million contract with the Panthers. Steps into the game this week, and we'll get into that in a little bit. The Ravens went ahead and cut Le'Veon Bell, who I believe had a little under 100 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns in about 5 games for the Ravens. They don't really see a need for him. They let him go. And then the final piece of news for this week was Robert Woods. About a day after the Rams go ahead and sign, also that is part of the news, OBJ did sign with the Rams, a little bit older news at this point, but OBJ went ahead and signed with the Rams. About a day after, they lose Robert Woods in practice to an ACL tear, and it seems like he's going to be out for the rest of the season. I don't doubt it. It seems like that's the case. So that's about the news for the week in terms of just strictly news. So going into the games, first game of the week, we had the Dolphins and Ravens. Ravens blow this one. And again, we've been saying this all season, me and Max both. The Ravens are a really inconsistent team. I don't really know where they fall. They're 6-3. They're not a bad team. They're just very inconsistent. They lose games to the Dolphins team, who's now on a 2-game win streak. Don't get me wrong. They're going on a bit of a streak here, which is good for them. However, the Ravens probably should have won this one regardless, especially with them vying for that spot in their division. So we're going to do stats a little bit. Lamar Jackson, 238 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 reception. Rushing leader is also Lamar Jackson at 39 yards. Ultimately, again, they decided to cut Le'Veon Bell, was not being overly productive. They just didn't see the money was there. Devontae Freeman has been pretty good for them. So I think it's pretty much the running back they're going to stick with from this point on. On the Dolphins side of things, nothing really to brag about here. Brissett and Tua pretty much split the game 50-50. I'd say Brissett had a little bit more time here, 156 yards for Brissett. And again, Wilson, who I had pretty much been called him out for getting cut last week. He puts up an 87-yard game, so that's just sports media, right? So going on from there, again, Dolphins moved to 3-7, Ravens moved to 6-3. I think the Ravens are probably going to win their division. Dolphins most likely will not like the playoffs. Next game, we had the Titans and the Saints. Titans take this one 23-21. Titans moved to 8-2. Saints moved to 5-4. Ultimately, the Saints are doing their best without any really sort of quarterback presence. Trevor Siemian had an awful game, 19 for 34, 2 touchdowns on 298 yards. Melvin Ingram steps up for 47 yards rushing and a touchdown. Obviously, Kamara did not play in this one. So then you also had, in terms of receiving, you had Harris lead them with 84 yards receiving. Ultimately, the Titans were just better in this one. Tannehill, 213 yards, 1 touchdown. Dante Foreman, who I believe is pretty much taken over the starting running back role for this team at this point. He had 30 yards rushing. They're splitting the carries pretty even between him and Adrian Peterson, eight carries there for Peterson, and then you had 11 for Foreman. McNichols has taken a back seat with 4 carries, so it seems like they're going to move with Dante Foreman going forward in terms of their primary running back, but still expect them to split the backfield. Again, they're trying to divide up the 30 carries they were given to Derrick Henry for most of the season, and they're going to have to replace that slowly over time. Receiving, yeah, Johnson step up for 100 yards, A.J. Brown with 16 yards receiving. Another game where we saw Julio out. Where's Julio been this season? That's a good question. I've not seen too much production out of him. You expect to see more of him, but he's been so injured this season. I want to see Julio really step into that offense, especially with Henry gone, to see what we can contribute. So that's that. Titans are pretty much shoo-ins to win their division at this point. Don't doubt it. Saints are still in the playoff mix. They're 5-4. Are they really going to beat out the rest of their division? They're going to beat up Buccaneers, etc. I doubt it. I think the Buccaneers are going to take the division. Saints may fall into a wild card role. We'll have to see. Still plenty of season left, especially with an extra game. Next game, Bills-Jets. Now let's talk about there. Mike White struggled against that incredible Bills defense, number 1 defense in the league. And the Bills do what they do, right? It wasn't much of a game to talk about here. Lions-Steelers. Steelers are one of those teams where you have inconsistency, and the Lions are pretty terrible. The fact that they even ended this game in a tie, 16-16, ends in OT, pretty abysmal game for the Steelers. When you look at the Lions offense, unproductive as can be. 25 passes, 14 completed for Jared Goff, 114 yards on a single touchdown, on a single interception. DeAndre Swift, very productive, 33 rushes for 130 yards. Again, looking at this Lions offense, so unproductive. And then you have the Steelers, who Big Ben was out, so you have Mason Rudolph. On top of this offense now already having quarterback Ben Roethlisberger and Mason Rudolph, as we know, year prior, we know it doesn't do much. 242 yards on 50 attempts, 1 touchdown, 1 reception. Again, Steelers offense is pass, short pass. It's just the way it's developed this season. So that's why you see 50 passes for Rudolph. Najee Harris has been one of the, I'd say, top 3 running back in the league at this point in terms of his production. 105 yards for the game for him. Ultimately, again, Steelers dropped this one because you got to beat this Lions team. They are awful in and out. Steelers, another thing that's really inconsistent. Not much to talk about here. Moving on, Colts, Jaguars. Colts win this one 23-17. Colts move to 5-5. Jaguars move to 2-7. Again, not much to talk about this one. Struggling Trevor Lawrence, 162 yards, 16 for 35 completions. In terms of completions, not much to talk about there. Again, Trevor Lawrence is still coming into his own. This Jaguars team is really shaky. This Colts team is not great either. They come out with a narrow win. Again, Taylor doing what he does best, 21 yards on the ground, 21 carries on the ground, rather, 116 yards and a touchdown. Was a fantastic game for him, as always. Pittman, 71 for him. I think this Colts offense definitely has promise into the future. You got the right quarterback in there. I don't know if Wentz is your final destination in terms of quarterbacks. You move from there. You have Pittman at 71 yards. Pittman's been really good and really progressing this season. And then you have Taylor as well, who's been a top 2 running back in the league. I like the pieces they have on offense. I think you obviously put Nelson's fantastic. You spruce up that offensive line a little bit. You find the right quarterback. You have a fantastic offense. And you got some pieces on defense, too, between Darius Leonard and your subsequent players from there. Again, some pieces on defense, some pieces on offense. Not a horrible team, just missing a couple pieces. I also like Frank Wright as a coach. The Titans have pretty much taken this in terms of this season, but in terms of where they're going to end up, probably not the playoffs. Titans pretty much have this division. Moving on from there, big game here. Buccaneers drop the game to Washington. Washington wins it 29-19. In terms of the Buccaneers pretty much struggled on offense the entire game, as well as their defense did not generate anything in terms of a pass rush. Tom Brady, 220 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Leonard Fournette only had 47 yards on the ground. Mike Evans only had 60 yards on a touchdown. Again, in terms of the Buccaneers offense, was very unproductive. Defensively, generated no pressure, allowed the Washington offense to excel further than it probably should have. In terms of the Washington offense, we had Gibson with 64 yards and 2 touchdowns. McLaurin at 59 yards receiving. And then in terms of the Washington defense, big loss here. Weren't probably going to make the playoffs anyway, but definitely not now. The biggest part of their defense is now out for the year. Unfortunately, we had Chase Young go down with an ACL injury. He's done for the year, likely to require surgery. I hate to see it, but it's a tough loss for them. Again, Buccaneers dropped this one. I just feel like Washington has such a good defensive core between Deron Payne, Chase Young, obviously, who's now out. They can slip games in like this, and they can win games out of nowhere. That defense plays fantastic. Trevor McLaurin's a playmaker. I don't think McKissick or Gibson are horrible running backs. This team can win games, but they're nowhere near in terms of being able to compete for a playoff spot or a Super Bowl. And the Buccaneers dropped this one. And honestly, again, you brought back the same core with the Buccaneers in terms of the last season, but this defense has not played the same as it did last season or nearly anywhere near as good in terms of the playoff performance that they had last season. When you look at things, again, secondary has not been overly fantastic compared to last year. Their pass rush has been pretty much non-existent compared to last year. Where is this defense? And then obviously, when the Buccaneers offense doesn't get rolling either, you drop games like this. Moving on from there, Patriots, Browns. Patriots absolutely destroy the Browns. Patriots wins 45-7, absolute blowout. Patriots moved to 6-4. They're really vying for that playoff spot. Wouldn't be surprised they slip into that wild card spot behind the Buffalo Bills in terms of where they fall in the playoffs. Browns drop another one here. Huge loss for them. Baker Mayfield was not fantastic. I believe he went down with an injury. Case Keenum stepped in. Baker Mayfield, 73 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 reception. Case Keenum stepped in for 81 yards. His offense was pretty much non-existent. Obviously, Chubb did not have any rushes. You had Jonas Johnson step up for 99 yards. He was also the leading receiver with 58 yards. Again, offensively, their receiving core has pretty much done nothing. Quarterback play has been pretty abysmal. Between Baker Mayfield's just subpar play and then also his injuries. And then defensively, they had so many injuries too. This Browns team's a mess. They came into the season probably a top 3 team in the NFL. Their talent hasn't performed up to the level it should have, as well as the injuries have pretty much riddled them throughout the season. And it creates a 5-5 team for where you should have had nearly a 10-0 team, 8-2 type of team. And you just fall apart down the line. And then when you go against a team with really good coaching like the Patriots, you have Mac Jones playing absolutely fantastic in this game. 19 for 23, 198 yards, 3 touchdowns. Very efficient with the ball. No complaints with Mac Jones. Then Stevenson steps up. That's what the Patriots do. They get these no-name running backs. They step up. 100 yards, 2 touchdowns for him. In terms of receiving, Bourne, who pretty much went off in this game, and Myers also had a pretty solid game. So 98 yards for Bourne and a touchdown. He had 49 yards and a touchdown for Myers. Patriots especially dominate this game on defense. Duggar had an interception. Yes, I was going to say the Browns players, but no. Duggar had an interception. Had a sack from Kyle Van have a sack from Hightower. Wise Jr. had a sack and a half. You had a half a sack from Guy, a sack from Bauer. Again, tons of pressure on the quarterback. Also a half sack from Judon. Generated pressure. They played fantastic on defense. They were very efficient on offense. Came away with the win and absolutely just destroyed the Browns. They dominated that entire game through. Next game, similar idea. Cowboys come and absolutely dominate the Falcons. Cowboys take this one 43-3. Ultimately, Falcons have kind of benefited from an easier schedule, I would say, and that's why they're 4-5. But Cowboys show why they might be the best team in the NFC. Next, I don't know what team is as complete as the Cowboys are right now. Defense is top 5, which is incredible for how the Cowboys defense has always been in the past. Dak Prescott's playing out of his mind, 296 yards, 2 touchdowns. Pollard, 42 yards, but Ezekiel Elliott, very efficient, 41 yards with 2 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb, 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fantastic game there. And again, defensively, Micah Parsons, probably defensive rookie of the year, had a sack. Armstrong with the sack. Lewis with an interception. Brown with an interception. Going down the list. Trayvon Diggs has been absolutely playing out of his mind this season. Another interception for him. I believe he still leads the leagues in interceptions. So, again, that defense has really come together this season. Offense is playing very efficient, very good. They're just the most complete team in the NFC. And, when we came into the season, I personally didn't expect that either. Who thought the Cowboys were going to be this good coming into the season? Getting Dak back from a huge injury. Their defense has never been fantastic. I didn't think the addition of Micah Parsons or Trayvon Diggs would step out. Trayvon Diggs would step up as much as he did this season. Again, most complete team in the NFC. They pretty much had the NFC locked down. Definitely the NFC East division locked down. They're 100% shooing for the playoff spot there. Cowboys could be in the Super Bowl by the end of the season. I don't know. If I had to pick a team right now in the NFC to go to the Super Bowl, it'd probably be the Cowboys, especially after this week's performance. Moving on from there, the Panthers. Again, they just signed Cam Newton. Obviously, Sam Darnold went down with an injury. PJ Walker's kind of subpar. They go ahead and sign Cam Newton. Wasn't an incredible force in this game, but he was definitely leading off the bench. We saw plenty of videos of it, leading the team. PJ Walker, 167 yards on 29 attempts for 1 interception. Cam Newton only had 4 attempts for 8 yards and a touchdown. Again, was efficient when he came in, but obviously doesn't know the playbook yet. Comes in this week, so they can only use him in limited spurts. However, interesting enough, just how you cut Cam Newton, he goes to a couple teams, you sign him back for a $10 million contract. I watched this video on TikTok the other day. Panthers are paying like 5 quarterbacks. You have PJ Walker, and I forget who the guy underneath him is. They're paying for Teddy Bridgewater still. They're paying Sam Darnold. Now they're paying Cam Newton. So they're paying a ton of quarterbacks. So in terms of their financial situation, in terms of quarterbacks, not fantastic. Moving on from there, McCaffrey, 95 yards. And then in terms of on the ground, and you had 66 yards receiving from him. Robbie Anderson, 37 yards with a touchdown. Ultimately, I think the biggest part of the Panthers team right now, they allowed them to take down the 8-1 at that point. So I believe they're 8-2 now. Cardinals, again, I don't know if I mentioned it. Panthers won this one 34-10. Panthers 5-5. Cardinals now 8-2. Biggest part of this game was the defense by the Panthers, for sure. Sacked by Shaq Thompson. He had that sack and a half from Riddick, who I love Hassan Riddick. I think he just steps in at the right times. Dante Jackson had an interception. You also had a sack from Haynes. You had half a sack from Fox. Again, this defense pressured. Why am I blanking on his name? Colt McCoy. Thank you. The entire game, Colt McCoy had another iffy game here. Did not really repeat the magic that he had last week. 107 yards and an interception. James Conner was relatively unproductive, 39 yards and a touchdown. And Christian Kirk was a leading receiver, 58 yards. Again, still without Hopkins last week. I believe Hopkins and Kyler Murray do return this week. So, they dropped that one due to a Panthers team that played really well in terms of defensively, pretty solid offensively. They take advantage of it. They get that win. Don't know really where the Panthers fall at this point. Cardinals are shooting for the playoffs. I still think they're possible Super Bowl contenders. I do believe that DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray need to get it going like they did at the beginning of the season. Kyler Murray hasn't been as productive. Obviously, he's been in and out with injuries the past month or so, as well as DeAndre Hopkins. So, you got to see him get back into the swing of things, as well as be as productive as they were pre-injury. That's going to be key if they want to make a Super Bowl run. Again, pretty much shooting for the playoffs. Don't know really where the Panthers fall in terms of where they're going to make the playoffs or not at this point. It's tough to say, especially with Sam Darnold being out. My assumption is they're going to go more to Cam Newton as he learns the playbook. And if he plays really well in his playbook, you could have a quarterback controversy in Carolina. I don't know, but we'll have to see. Moving from there, Vikings, Chargers. Chargers dropped this one. Vikings won at 27-20. Vikings moved to 4-5. Chargers moved to 5-4. Again, in terms of the Chargers, I just see them as a young team that's still developing. They started off this year really hot. I still believe they're in position to win their division over, per se, the Chiefs. Although the Chiefs are hot on their tail, we'll have to see where it ends. Chiefs are really picking up, especially the game they just had, which I'll get to in a minute. Chiefs could swing back and take this division. It's still going to be a really close division either way, but I digress. Justin Herbert, 195 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Eckler had 44 yards. Keenan Allen had 98 yards. And then looking at the Viking side of things, Cousins, 2 touchdowns, 294 yards. Cook ran for 94 yards and a touchdown. Justice Jefferson had a fantastic game, 143 yards receiving. And then defensively, Eric Kendricks had played out of his mind in this game. He had a fantastic sack, and I believe he had that swat down interception, which was fantastic. Was a major part in turning that game over, and especially winning the game late for them. Chargers dropped this one again. I'm a Chargers fan. No matter where we land this season, if we land above 500, I'm happy. I had a second-year quarterback that stepped up to nearly an MVP level. We have a developing team. We had the turnover from all the veterans about 3 years ago. And this team was in a complete rebuilding stage, and now it looks up. No matter where they fall, whether they make the playoffs, whether they don't, if you're above 500, you can't be mad as a Chargers fan. You did fantastic. In terms of the Vikings, again, they're a team that just is wishy-washy, an inconsistent team that's 4-5. I doubt they're going to make the playoffs. Moving on from there, Seahawks, Packers. Packers are just outright the better team. Shut them down, especially defensively. Seahawks put up 0 points. Ultimately, Russell Wilson comes back and does not perform overly well. 161 yards and 2 interceptions. Alex Collins, they're still without Chris Carson. I think he's going to return in the next week or so. 41 yards on the ground for Collins. Everett was their leading receiver, 63 yards. DK Metcalf, 26 yards. Lockett, 23 yards. Shut them down on offense. Without a doubt, that was the biggest factor here. Aaron Rodgers didn't have a fantastic game either. 292 yards and interception. A.J. Dillon, who pretty much stepped up after Aaron Jones is now out, I believe, 1 to 2 weeks. I'd probably lean more 2 weeks with an MCL sprain. And you had 21 carries for A.J. Dillon, 66 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, this next 2 weeks is going to be crucial. If A.J. Dillon, who I believe leads the league in, I was reading an article this morning, leads the league in yards after contact, he's a fantastic running back. He's a workhorse. If he performs well in these next 2 weeks, expect to see Aaron Jones gone after the season. It just makes no sense to pay him the money that they are. I just see that A.J. Dillon taking over this backfield. Trade Aaron Jones, get the value you can out of him, and keep A.J. Dillon for a cheaper contract for as long as you can, and eventually re-sign him. You're going to get more longevity out of him and just as much production. Ultimately, again, A.J. Dillon performs well in these next 2 weeks. I expect Aaron Jones to be gone for the Panthers after this next season, without a doubt. And then receiving-wise, Devontae Adams, 78 yards in this game. Again, complete domination by the Panthers defense, and that was really the key here. Next game we have going on, Eagles-Broncos. So Eagles take this one 30-13. Jalen Hurts puts up 178 yards and 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. Howard steps up, who's been performing pretty well, kind of like his old self when he was with the Bears. 83 yards. I think it's 2 weeks in a row that he's performed decently well. Devonta Smith, 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, I believe Jalen Hurts has performed well enough that he's going to, by himself, obviously the rest of this season, as well as the next season too. He might be the long-term answer in Philadelphia. We'll have to see. I think they have to rebuild that offensive line, get a running back in there that really can compete because, as good as Jordan Howard has performed over the past 2 weeks, they've had really inconsistent play from running backs. What happened to Miles Sanders? I mean, he completely fell off a cliff. He just, I don't know where he is. Obviously, I think he was injured, but, even when he's been in the season, he has been relatively unproductive. And the Broncos side of things, Teddy Bridgewater's all right, 226 yards. He's not really going to win you anything crazy. And that's part of the problem there. Javonte Williams was kind of shut down this week, 48 yards. Again, Broncos kind of is a similar situation to the Packers, where you have Melvin Gordon, who they signed, I believe, 2 years ago at this point. Probably going to cut him, stick with Javonte Williams. They just drafted him. Similar to they did with Phil Lindsay. He left too. So goodbye to all of them. And then beyond that, obviously, Jerry Jeudy had a rough game here, 48 yards. Nothing much to talk about. Again, offensively was lackluster. And the Eagles' offense was pretty productive in this game, so that really decided that. Next game, we had the Chiefs and Raiders. Chiefs' offense looked like its old self here. Fantastic for me because I pretty much relied on the Chiefs my entire fantasy season. I have Mahomes, Hill, and Butker. So Looking at this game, Mahomes, 406 yards, 5 touchdowns. Again, looked like himself. Fantastic game for him. Derek Williams and their rushing game was a decent complement to their passing game. However, nothing spectacular. Again, decent compliment. That was the key here. Travis Kelce, 119 yards. And then you had Tyreek Hill, not as many yards, 83 yards, but had 2 touchdowns. So fantastic game for him. And then the defense stepped up pretty well here. Nothing crazy, but Nadi had a sack. He had Reed the sack. An interception from Sorensen. Ultimately, the Raiders, it was the second week in a row they've lost. Pretty bad now. Again, I just feel like eventually this team's off the field. I wouldn't say issues and or happenings have really caught up with them at this point. Derek Carr, 261 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. I just felt like at some point it's going to catch up. Josh Jacobs, 7 rushing attempts for 16 yards. Pretty abysmal. Kenyon Drake, 4 rushing attempts for 16 yards. Pretty abysmal. Edwards, who I happened to drop this past week, 88 yards on a touchdown, was pretty solid there. Again, the Chiefs' offense looked like its old self, and that's if the Chiefs continue to play like that, they're going to come back and win this division. They're 6-4. I believe they're first place in the division now because the Raiders are 5-4, Chargers are 5-4. Chiefs take control of the division again, and I don't know where it's going to end up. But again, it's looking good for the Chiefs right now. I still think the Chargers and the Chiefs are really playing for this division. I don't believe the Raiders are really going to edge it out here, but at this point, I think the Chiefs are going to take the division. I think they're going to really get that offense going again like they had it before. It's just a matter of how well the Chargers are going to play down the stretch, and they're going to give the Chiefs competition. Chiefs could still steal it, but I put my money on the Chiefs right now if I had to. Final game of the week, 49ers, Rams. Okay, so this game was pretty bad for Matt Stafford, 243 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Henderson did not perform great. The 49ers stuffed the rushing game pretty well, only 31 yards for Henderson. Cooper Kupp, 122 yards. And then I believe losing Robert Woods this week was a bit of a change in dynamic of the Rams offense. That probably hurt a little bit. Obviously, Odell knew none of the playbooks, so they used him in very limited spurts. 2 receptions for 18 yards here. And then Van Jefferson had 54 yards. So, having to redistribute his receptions and his targets is going to be a step that they're going to have to take this week. I wouldn't overreact to this Rams loss, but they moved to 7-3. And 49ers definitely outperformed what I expected them to. Garoppolo was pretty efficient in this one, 182 yards and 2 touchdowns, like spectacular. Mitchell, 91 yards on 27 carries, did break his finger, maybe out for the upcoming week. Just something to note there. Deebo Samuel, again, he's been great all season, probably top 5 receiver in the league this season, 97 yards and a touchdown. George Kittle makes his return with 50 yards and a touchdown here. Ultimately, again, 49ers offense is pretty solid. Their defense was fantastic here. Again, against a struggling Rams offense, having to redistribute the targets and really figure themselves out with the addition of Odell. So, again, if I'm the Rams, I'm not Rams fan. I'm not overly panicking here, but again, the 49ers defense played pretty well. Fred Warner was solid. He had 2 interceptions by Ward, a sack by Bosa. So, in terms of the defense, that's what I have to report there. So, that being said, that marks all the games for the week. So, going into the lightning round, going to pick them right now. Lightning round, here we go. Patriots, Falcons, I'm going with the Patriots here. They've been playing very efficient, very good. X's and O's, fundamentals, absolutely unlocked. Falcons have really benefited from a weak schedule. Easy pick here. I expect the Patriots by a lot. Ravens, Bears, I'm taking the Ravens. As inconsistent as they are, I don't trust the Bears either. Packers, Vikings, I'm taking the Vikings. Colts, Bills, I'm taking the Bills without a doubt. Lions, Browns, I expect the Browns to probably bounce back here, but the Lions may fight, wouldn't count them out. Washington, Panthers, this is probably going to be a really good game. I'm probably going to go with the Panthers here, just because I think if Cam Newton gets more comfortable and the defense continues to play how it is, they'll see this one from the Washington football team. But again, I do expect this one to be probably pretty close. Texans, Titans, easy Titans win there. 49ers, Jaguars, I expect the 49ers to take it. Dolphins, Jets, absolute toilet bowl. I'm probably going to take the Dolphins here. They've been hot, 2-game win streak over a Jets team that just got blown out by the Bills. Not confident in Mike White. It was such an overreaction to his first game. Not really quarterback controversy in New York. I think Zach Wilson has that job locked down. So Saints, Eagles, picking the Saints here. Probably might expect the Eagles to pick up a fight. Bengals, Raiders, I'm taking the Raiders here. I think they're going to bounce back against the Bengals team. Cowboys, Chiefs going to be a fantastic game. There's going to be a real test for the Chiefs. If the Chiefs can win this one, I think they really solidify themselves as the division winners and maybe push them back into a playoff spot. Potentially, again, they do really well against this Cowboys team. We're talking an absolute blowout here. They may move themselves back into Super Bowl contention just like that. And that's just a product of how talented Mahomes is and how Andy Reid is to really adjust that offensive playbook to really get the most out of the players right now. However, I'm going with the Cowboys in this one. I think the Cowboys are going to win this one without a doubt. More complete team. They blew out the Falcons last week. Expected to be a relatively close one, but I'm going to pick the Cowboys edge out this one. Cardinals Seahawks, I'm taking the Cardinals easy. Return of Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins against this really weak Seahawks team this season. I'm taking the Cardinals, no doubt. Steelers Chargers, I'm taking the Chargers in this one. Expecting to bounce back against this really weak Steelers team. Or I wouldn't say weak, but really inconsistent. So Chargers should bounce back and win this one. Giants Buccaneers, final game of the week. As much as I want the Giants to win, I'm taking the Buccaneers. They're not losing 2 in a row. And that's about it. So if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, please leave them in the comments down below. Again, bit of a short episode this week. Max wasn't here. Obviously, he's a little bit busy. I am pretty busy too, but I will return next week. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this episode. See you guys around.